All right. Again, welcome everyone. We're really excited to welcome you to what is session number 2 of our 6-part series that we're facilitating this school year around best first instruction. So we're going to get into a little bit more about what that means very soon. And we are also excited to get your feedback in terms of what you would like to see in future forums. First, we're going to start with some introductions and tell us a little bit about the education nonprofit that we work for called Generation Schools Network. My name is Erin Coker, and this is my second year at GSN. I'm a senior director. I support schools across the state with implementing a variety of different education grants, from computer science to literacy, school improvement, before and after school programming. Before joining GSN, I was in Denver Public Schools for 15 years. I also held a variety of roles. I was a teacher, literacy specialist, school improvement partner, and district administrator. I've also worked at a national level as a curriculum developer. Now I'll pass it off to my colleague Jason, who is also here with us today.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jason Franks, and I'm also a senior director at Generation Schools Network. The work that I do, it's very similar to what Erin does. I support schools across the state with implementing a variety of grants. My specialty is actually in math education. Before GSN, I was a uh, teacher and an administrator and a math specialist and a project manager with the expertise in math, culture-based education, and I do some coaching and leadership training. So that's us in a nutshell. So let's go into the vision of Generation Schools Network, meaning that all schools are vibrant, inclusive ecosystems that ensure every student thrives in school, work, and life. And our mission statement is Generation Schools Network co-creates healthy school ecosystems by partnering with educators, students, families, and communities to elevate the education experience. And so the states in yellow are the ones that we currently have worked with. As you can see, it's not just in Colorado, but all over the country. Recently, I was just in Arizona with the Chinle School District, and across the state of Colorado. So that's where we do our work. We have associates all over the country that work with different sets of schools with different grants, and overall, it's just about providing those healthy school environments with through grants. And so, speaking of grants, it is easy season, and we are an approved provider. So please reach out if you have any questions about this grant. We have a development team that comes alongside schools to write the grants or write the grant. And in addition to Easy, the CS grant for CDE is also open. We'll put some info in the chat for you to reach out and to our director of development, Nate. And so his information is there, and I will put the contacts in the chat.
Oh, no worries, Jason. I went ahead and already added it to the chat, so we're good to
Oh,
go.
right on.
Nate
So
has one of
efficient.
those fancy calendars too that you can just schedule time to talk to him, or you can send him an email, or you can reach out to either of us. Happy to help.
All right. So the objectives for our forum today. So in this forum today, we'll explore best first instruction strategies for student academic feedback. So tonight is all about feedback, best practices, and strategies you can implement that do not demand more of your time. As with all of our best first instruction forums, we'll also take a look at coaching and strategies to support school-wide implementation. We have a one-pager for you that you will follow our session tonight and share all of the resources with you. So the one-pager has links of everything that we're going to show you tonight. So if you click the link in the chat, you will be prompted to make a copy of the doc. And once you do that, you will have the doc and all the resources you can take notes and copy. So Erin has already put in the chat for all of you um, to participate.
Yeah. So
Oh,
Brian
you're
and
welcome.
Chelsea, if you could just let us know, thumbs up or good to go in the chat, that when you click that link, that it allows you to make your own copy of the one pager and take notes in it.
You just put a thumbs up or a got it in the chat if you are so inclined.
All right. Well, if there are any questions about how to use that document, please let us know, and we'll just keep moving along here.
So first of all, we just wanted to mm, get to know who is in the room. I know there's two participants with us today, and we're recording it for um, other means as well. So if you could, in the chat, share your name, your district, and your role, and basically how you heard about us today and what you are most excited to discuss. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that in the chat.
And it looks like folks are having a little trouble with that one pager. So I'm going to work on problem solving that while you're getting to know more about the folks that have joined us this evening.
Right. So good evening, Chelsea. I'm Morgan Community College in Fort Morgan, STEM coach. Welcome.
And it looks like one of the other advisors at her school recommended the workshop. So that's great. Glad you can
Awesome.
make it, Chelsea.
And we also have Brian, Cannon City Schools, Director of Curriculum and Assessment. And the superintendent asked you to join, but you're not sure what to expect. So hopefully we can give you some tips and tricks that you can implement in your school. Okay.
Awesome.
So let's just kind of, before we dive into the content for this session, we want to revisit the definition for best first instruction from the Colorado Department of Education. So when planning the first instruction, BFI, the foundation requires educators to build meaningful relationships with all students, address individual needs, create relevancy by allowing students to see themselves in their learning, and provide opportunities, exploration, and expression. The educator also utilizes instructional materials and strategies that honor the diversity of the classroom. And to add onto our understanding of BFI, here are the four components named from CDE. So the first one is build relationships. BFI should deepen student agency through caring, positive, and authentic connections with peers and adults. The next one is meet the needs of all students. So BFI should include accessible, equitable, and flexible instruction to meet the changing needs of diverse student populations. The next one is create relevancy. BFI should engage students in authentic, meaningful, real-world, and engaging work. And the last one is foster disciplinary literacy. So BFI should position student work, think, talk, and plan as experts in the content world. So I'll pass it
Awesome.
off to Erin to go into the research behind BFI.
Thanks. And stay tuned for a BFI session on disciplinary literacy. That is something that I've worked on throughout my career and would be excited to share with you all as well. All right. So as we've mentioned before, research is a really important aspect to BFI and to these forums. We will only be sharing instructional strategies and resources with you that are grounded in research. And tonight we're going to revisit the research from Hattie. We looked at Hattie when we were together last time. Here you will see that these are Hattie's effect sizes. So essentially, Hattie did a meta-analysis of all the education research out there to determine what actually had an impact on student achievement. And so he determined that if there is an effect size of over 0.4, which is anything that you see in blue on your screen, that had a positive impact on student achievement. So again, anything over the effect size of 0.4 is within the zone of desired effects. And so our topic this evening on feedback has an effect size of 0.7. So it's almost double 0.4. So we know that it has a good and high impact on student achievement. And let's go ahead and dive into our top 5 tips for giving great academic feedback. You'll find these linked on your one-pager. Hopefully everybody was able to access that now that I fixed the share settings on it. And this is going to be the touchstone for our work tonight. You will see the resources and strategies that we're sharing all tie back to these 5 tips. All right, so here we go. Number 1 is to set clear targets. Before giving the lesson, set clear targets for mastery by using grade level standards and tools such as rubrics and exemplars. Actively monitor. So actively monitoring student progress during the lesson and giving students targeted feedback that names the error and the next steps to move closer to mastery. Asset-based. We're going to take a look at a culturally responsive asset-based approach that comes from Zaretta Hammond tonight that is about delivering feedback that is explicit and affirming to the student. It's also really important that we build in time for revision. So we want to give intentional time for students to edit and revise their work using the feedback that you as the educator have provided. And finally, it's really important that we involve our students in this process. We want to give them opportunities to give and receive feedback to each other, a give and a take from their peers. All right. So tonight we're going to be sharing with you 2 ways that you can ensure you set clear targets and expectations for students. We're going to be looking at exemplars and rubrics. For exemplars, we're going to take a look at a math example, and for rubrics, we're going to take a look at some examples for literacy. So creating an exemplar is a part of the planning process that can really be as simple as you're sitting down and answering the questions exactly how you would expect students to answer them. This allows you as the educator to make note of exactly what you're looking for when you are actively monitoring student progress and giving feedback. And as I said, we're going to be taking a look at a math example. And then in terms of literacy, we're going to share with you a set of rubrics that you can use from SCALE, the Stanford Center of Assessment, Learning, and Equity. These rubrics are aligned to grade level reading and writing standards. And we will also take a look at how you can use these rubrics, I like to say, a la carte. Rather than using a rubric with multiple indicators, you can take a look at one. This allows the teacher to narrow the focus, and it adds to the frequency that you're using rubrics in the classroom rather than waiting for the end of unit or culminating assessment or project. All right, so there are 3 questions that Hattie brings forth for us to ask when we consider giving feedback that will help our students and that will be effective and easy for us to craft. And they are on the screen here for you. Where am I going? That is the goal. How am I going? That is the feedback. And where am I going next? That is feed forward. So where are we going is the how. And this is an essential step we have in terms of getting student investment. As students become familiar with the rubrics, we can ask them to set goals and articulate what they need to do to reach this goal. Later in our session tonight, we're actually going to share with you some lesson ideas that you can incorporate into your classroom to help students learn what the rubrics are all about, to break them down and internalize them. The next 2 questions highlight the importance of both feedback and feed forward. Those 2 things together are really critical. We want to share with students what they did well. That's also touches on the asset-based aspect of feedback. We also want to make sure that we point out any mistakes that they made or errors that they've made so that they don't make those again. And we want to give them a clear next step on what they can do to improve. All right, so Jason's going to walk us through an example here of an exemplar from math.
let me unmute myself. So I've found in my career as a math teacher, the best way to give feedback that for me, was to look at exemplars. And to create an exemplar, I usually, if for any kind of assessment task, I usually do the assessment myself and set the standard. So do all the work, answer everything that needs to be done. And so when you look at the student examples or student exemplars, you can tell what and where the student went right and where went wrong. So first off, did they get the correct answer correct? That's just one aspect. And then if they did, how did they get to that problem? So as you see here, you can see this is a high school example of solving system of equations. Did they show the work? Did they use the right process? Um, uh, and then did they graph the problems correctly? So you can see with the exemplars exactly where the student went wrong or went correctly. Um, if the student didn't show any work, that's some feedback that you can give. If the student got the question wrong and you can trace their work back and figure out where they made the mistake, that's another way to give them feedback. Um, the the examples that you get or the exemplars that you show can also be used for um, getting data from your students. So if you look at all your students, all the tasks that they have given you, and you can see, is showing work a problem, then you can reteach that part. Is getting the answer correctly the problem, then you know that there's something um, that you probably need to reteach in your lesson so that they can get the right question. Is just the graphing wrong, then you can reteach just on that. So looking at an exemplar and comparing that to the student work is a great way to figure out where and when the student went wrong and how they can fix the problem. Do they need to show their work? Do they need to graph correctly? Is there Can you even understand? So that those are some feedback that you can give the students, like, hey, where show me how you got that answer because you didn't show your work. Um, and uh, feedback as like that. But I found to get the best feedback to students, I've looked at exemplars and compared that to the student work. So it's very easy to see where the students are going and what you need to focus on for reteach.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jason, for sharing. All right. So when we look more closely at rubrics and Hattie's 3 questions, we see that when we use rubrics, educators can review the student work and ID the point of error, very similar to the process that Jason just described with exemplars. We can advise the student on what they did well and what they can do to improve using language directly from the rubric. That's also really helpful because it's tied back to the grade level standards as well. And then we can prompt the student to consider feedback given the context of the assignment and provide time for them to revise and edit. All right, so if you are looking for rubrics to use, as I mentioned, you might consider using the rubrics from Scale. They are on the Literacy Design Collaborative website. They have rubrics for reading and writing, science and social studies, K through 12. And if you visit their website, we're going to throw that link in the chat for you to make sure that you have it. Essentially, you'll scroll down on their website to where you see what you see on our screen here, where it says K-12 student rubrics. And there are a variety of different rubrics there for you to choose from. As I mentioned before, they are on the Literacy Design Collaborative website, and they are vetted by Scale, the Stanford Center for Assessment, Learning, and Equity. I've used these rubrics for many, many years, and I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them. Let me make sure we get those in the chat. Oh, Jason's already put them in the chat. Awesome. All right, we'll just keep moving along here then. So let's take a look at an example here. This is from 5th grade. This is using the same rubrics that we were just chatting about, the scale rubrics. And I want to highlight before we move forward, when we think about this standard, which is main idea, it's a reading standard, we know that our students need to get to meets expectations, which is to summarize the text, convey the main idea, and explain how the key details support that main idea. And I think it's really important to make sure that we're all very clear that meets expectations is an end of year expectation. Ideally, we would want our students to be able to demonstrate that standard before March, because that's when we have our state testing. But we are not expecting students to get to meets expectations before then. So all of our work that we're doing right now on November 15th is to get students from wherever they are on this rubric to where we need them to be, which is meet expectations. Therefore, our feedback should be focused on supporting students with getting to grade level. I like to think about it like training for a marathon, right? I have never done a full marathon, but I've done a half marathon. And I can tell you that it took me weeks to train for this half marathon. And every week I would increase my mileage to a point that when I got to the half marathon, that I would be able to run the full duration of it. If I wouldn't have done that, there's no way I would have been able to run that half marathon. So our students are preparing to run a race, and we need to give them meaningful opportunities to practice how and give feedback on how to get to that grade level standard by March. So you can see here when we look at approaches expectations and how that compares to meets expectations, that the key difference between those two performance bands on the rubric in 5th grade is this idea that students are conveying the main idea and key details, but they have to explain how those key details support the main idea. So that is the thing that we're really going to be zeroing in on as we're reading students' responses, talking to students about what they're reading, and that's how we would give feedback to them. So, for example, I've put one on the screen for you. I might say to a student who's scoring a 2, not quite a 3, you did a great job identifying the main idea and the supporting key details. I might even name the main idea and name the key details that I'm seeing. Revisit your work and the text that you read and add specifically how those key details support your main idea. That's the jump that I need them to make so that they are performing at the grade level standard. Is everybody ready to run a marathon now? All right. So as we mentioned earlier, we also want to share with you some ideas to consider when supporting students with internalizing rubrics. It's important that we put the rubrics in front of students and they know what they say. So my suggestion would be to choose certain rubrics that you plan to use all year long. Those are the rubrics that you're going to want to have students interacting with. There's a variety of different ways to approach this. We've given you some ideas in the one-pager that we provided for you. So you would have students paraphrasing the expectations in the meets expectations column, looking at the difference between the approaching column and the meets expectation column, similar to what we just did in the last example. You can have students creating visuals so that they understand the components of a rubric. And you can also have students setting goals to support their understanding and to build their investment in their work. We also want to lift up the importance of peer evaluation. We've already talked a little bit about it. Peer evaluation builds student agency, investment, and confidence when they're given the opportunity to provide and receive feedback from their peers. your decision making here is going to depend on whatever your purpose is. So whatever strategy that you choose as the educator is going to depend on what you want students to look for. So for example, if you know that your students need some support with grammar, you might use something like the cup strategy that we have on the screen here. That is a strategy where students look specifically for things like capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling. The purpose there would be for them to revise and edit their grammar. If you have a different purpose, let's say your students need some support with structure and organization, you might try something like the backwards outlining process. This gives students, this is where students are looking at another student's work and they are creating an outline for it, and then using that outline as a jumping off point to a conversation with their peer to say, is this what you intended in terms of your structure? Because this is what I got out of your paper. That can be a really meaningful activity for students to do together. And then finally, if your students need to process and really flesh out their ideas and the content of their writing, you might have them do like a fishbowl discussion. That can work really well. Again, all of these ideas are listed in your one pager. All right. Jason, you want to talk to us a little bit about asset-based feedback protocol from Zaretta Hammond?
Sure. So the asset-based feedback protocol is taken from Zarina Hammond, and it addresses the challenge of providing feedback that doesn't create anxiety and moves students forward in their learning. So there is a link. I just put the link in the chat, but she cites research from Cohen and Steele documenting that students of color were more likely to receive cushioned feedback that minimized errors and provided little direction for improving performance. And so Cohen and Steele offer wise feedback as a solution. Convey faith in the student's potential, be honest about errors in the current performance, and offer specific action steps for growth. So cushioned and wise. So we're going to go to just a website that lists the asset-based protocol. If Erin could.
Yeah, just one second. I'm getting us there. Almost there. Here we go.
And so when you're taking a look at there's a structure of what we're seeing in the asset-based protocol. It's feedback, making feedback culturally responsive. So begin with a check-in, have a few minutes of reconnecting, explicitly state the purpose so that it's clear to the student that what the purpose of the assignment was, and give evidence by citing progress and growth in other areas. So, and then validate the mastery of learning. So affirm the student's ability to master the learning target as you acknowledge the high demands of the task. Collaborate with students to analyze the task and discuss easy and challenging parts. So you're discussing with the student the mastery level. And then deliver specific, actionable, and timely feedback. So this is important. If you're not going to give, or if you give feedback that is not actionable for the student doesn't know what to do with it. And if it's not timely, then it really doesn't sink into the student that, oh, I did that assignment like a month ago, and you're only giving me feedback now. So it's the assignment is out of their head. They're not really thinking about it anymore. So specific and actionable and timely feedback is very important. And then finally, just create a safe space so students can process and react. And then give specific action for improvement. So those, how can we get better at the task? So that's specific improvement strategies. Asking students to paraphrase their learning and restate what they heard, what is incorrect. So when you're giving the feedback to the student, you want them to understand what you're saying. So asking them to paraphrase what you just said is a way for you to confirm that they actually heard you and they can make the changes. And then offer emotional and encouragement and reassurance. Make sure that uh, you're being supportive. You give them what feedback you are, and then um, you let them go and do it. And then finally, just check the progress by intentional and scheduling a time to follow up and check progress. So this goes back to the timely feedback as well. So if checking the progress of the assignment, if you ask them to redo it, make sure you follow through with um, that feedback, and you make sure that you take that feedback to its natural conclusion with the student. So that is the asset-based feedback protocol, and you have the link. And so if you want to just dig deeper into that, you can. Um, so back to Erin.
Awesome. And just to note again what Jason already shared, you can actually go to Hammond's book on culturally responsive teaching and education. And it notes there that she talks specifically about this asset-based feedback protocol on page 104. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. It's phenomenal. Lots of really good takeaways. All right. So as we mentioned earlier, we are going to dive into coaching tonight as well. And I want to start with this quote as a way of grounding our work. We'd like to bring the spirit of this quote to our work tonight as we dive into how we can support teachers across all of the systems in our school. So let's take a look at this quote from Benjamin Franklin. So tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. So this is really about creating a partnership with teachers that supports learning and implementation. All right, so to start us off, I want to take a look at a very important finding published by Joyce and Showers. This is from 2002. So when we look at the research for PD, we know that PD is not enough. And I will give you all a second to read and internalize this graph. You will see the far left column are the training components. Then we have knowledge, so building knowledge. Then we have skill demonstration, is a person after a training able to demonstrate a skill that they've learned. And then the far right column is actually using something new in the classroom. And what you'll notice is the very bottom row is where we add on intentional coaching. So it's not until we add on that intentional coaching that we actually see a shift in teacher practice. In fact, it goes from 5% to 95%. So we know from this research and just from working in schools that when you're learning something new, having someone there with you to thought partner and to coach and to be there with you in the classroom and in planning is really critical for feeling comfortable to trying something new in your classroom. I say all of that because it's really important to think about support for teachers across all of our systems. So as you can see here, we start with high quality PD, and it's important that that PD offers teachers the opportunity to practice in the PD and to get feedback. So therefore, if the PD was on feedback, just like tonight, we would want to provide feedback on their ability to give feedback. The next step would be to look at planning. And admin can join teachers in PLCs and support with planning. They can support with creating exemplars and planning how to incorporate rubrics into their lessons. Then we take a look at observation and feedback, and that means the administrators and the coaches are joining teachers in the classroom, observing and giving specific feedback on how they are incorporating feedback in their classroom. And then finally, joining DDI meetings or data-driven instruction provides time to analyze student work and support with crafting feedback, as well as instructional next steps. So all of these actions together build what I like to call teacher wraparound support and school-wide implementation, because we know from the research, without support in coaching, planning, and DDI, we're only going to see about a 5% shift in practice. With all of this support, with the wraparound support, that jumps to 95.